One cowboy stopped to save a young girl with a bullet in her belly, her amazing journey revealed. Jake sat in the local diner, the clatter of dishes resonating in the background, but his mind drifted elsewhere. Each spoonful of his lukewarm coffee felt heavier, coffee stains threatening to tarnish the already muted colors of his flannel shirt. At 29, he had become the stalwart of his family, dedicating every ounce of energy to the ranch, living in the shadow of his father's legacy. But he felt trapped, eyes downcast on his plate, yearning for those dreams of rodeo fame that now felt like distant stars fading into memory. The weight of unrealized ambitions pressed against his chest, an invisible vice that threatened to suffocate him. He feared that he'd become nothing more than another cog in the wheel of life, grinding down with each passing day. A sudden jarring sound shattered the murmur of the diner. A sharp bang echoed from Main Street, followed by the frantic hollers of panic. Jake jolted upright, adrenaline spiking, body instinctively tense with purpose. In moments like these, hesitation was a luxury he couldn't afford. He stormed out, the hot Texas sun beating down, intensity crackling in the dry air. It didn't take long to spot the source of the chaos. A small figure crumpled on the ground, the crimson stain on the dirt contrasting brutally with the sun-kissed skin of a girl, no older than 12. His heart raced and he shot forward without thinking. As he scooped Lily into his arms, her slight weight was a reminder of his strength. And yet, it felt crushingly fragile, a reminder of innocence caught in the violent crossfire of a small town's troubles. "Hold on, Lily," he murmured, steadying her. Time became fluid, merging seconds into an agonizing stretch. As he sprinted toward the hospital, her gentle voice broke through the haze of urgency. "I want to be a veterinarian," she whispered, her breath shallow. Each word ignited something within him, a flicker of forgotten dreams melting into the heat of present fears. Jake was listening more to the weight behind her words than the words themselves, resonating like a haunting echo in his heart. Here was a girl, lost in a world that hadn't given her a chance, fighting to voice a desire that mirrored his own, both feeling the burden of expectation bearing down like a fence post ready to give way. Before they could reach the hospital, a shadow loomed ahead. A group of local bullies, always seeking an opportunity to confront his rugged exterior, emerged from the dust. They were predators, sensing vulnerability, hungry to taunt. A knot formed in Jake's stomach. A mix of anger and protective instinct surged through him. This moment was no longer just about saving Lily. It was a chance to teach her about standing tall, about confronting life's injustices. "You better back off," he warned, his voice low but firm, muscles coiling tighter. Just then, tensions reached a breaking point as a chilling truth dawned. Their families were tangled in a web of animosity, decades of resentment and rivalry coming to a head. Jake's resolve was shaking. He clenched his fist to control the tumult inside him. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." With his heart thundering, he felt her slip against him, the flicker of life waning. Jake's mind raced. Was he strong enough not just to save her body but to fight against the long-standing injustices that had defined their lives? Sirens wailed in the distance, hope and dread intertwining, as he wondered if this moment could finally shatter the barriers between their fated histories. Would this act of courage become the catalyst for change? Or would it simply be swallowed by the dust of their unforgiving town? Each breath felt like a desperate plea, begging for strength in the growing shadows as the hospital came into view. Jake burst through the hospital doors, urgency propelling him forward. The antiseptic smell was a stark contrast to the blood-soaked reality he had just come from. Nurses rushed to meet them, and in that moment, Jake surrendered Lily to their care, an action both liberating and terrifying. He clutched the edge of the waiting area, yearning to follow, but the fear of being unable to help her gripped him tight. As he stood there, uncertainty swirled in his mind. What had he truly done by stepping into the chaos? He had reacted, of course, but beyond that lay the looming question of whether this was merely a flash of bravery or the beginning of something greater. Flickers of guilt and pride danced in his chest, battling for dominance. Had he injected hope into a hopeless scenario, or had he simply offered himself up as another victim of fate's cruel game? His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed the group of bullies lingering outside, their presence as unwelcome as the unwanted heat that seeped through the hospital's walls. They exchanged taunts and jeers, emboldened by the commotion. Jake's jaw tightened. They might not understand the severity of today's events. They had never been forced to confront life as he had. Beyond bravado, beyond posturing, they were lost in their small minds. But now he felt their contempt shift from him to the situation itself. His heart raced again. This moment would become a defining point in his life. Did he allow cowardice to guide him again? Or did he stand firm for Lily and every other child who had ever felt the weight of that same hatred? A surge of raw determination filled him. The anger that had simmered in him for so long now bubbled to the surface. "You want a piece of me?" he challenged the nearest bully, stepping into the open like a bull ready for a fight. Just as quick as it had appeared, the challenge seemed to stun them. Their bravado flickered, uncertainty rippling through the knot of boys. One of the bullies, a tall, lean figure whose voice cracked when he spoke, sneered. "You think you're a hero now, huh? Just because you picked up a girl? You ain't nobody. Your daddy's name won't save you." Every taunt stung, but deep down, Jake recognized that this was a chance to break from the weight of his past. They were using his father's shadow against him, but Jake had realized something vital. He wasn't just his father's son, he was his own man, capable of carving a path free from the burdens of familial expectations. "Maybe that legacy is why I'm here today," Jake shouted back, adrenaline coursing through him. "My father taught me strength. Let's see if you've got any of your own." The shifting expressions of the bullies painted a picture of internal conflict, but before they could react, a door swung open and a doctor emerged, face taut with urgency. "We're doing everything we can, but she's in critical condition," he announced. Jake's heart plummeted at the weight of those words. Now he had to focus. The fight wouldn't serve Lily, but his response would. Faced with the challenge of changing his legacy, Jake felt a swell of conviction. He stepped back, his fists unclenching, shifting his focus from them to the hope that still flickered for those dreaming of brighter futures. He had to stand up not just as a defender, but as a bridge for others. A mentor not just to Lily but to himself, unlocking the dreams buried beneath layers of obligation. With dire outcomes still looming, he resolved to fight, not with fists, but with purpose. His journey would be about shattering the cycle of resentment and redefining what it meant to be a cowboy. The echoes of sirens grew louder in his mind as he turned his back on the bullies. Would he be able to save Lily? Could he finally face down the chains of expectation that had held him for so long? Each moment ahead was a call for action, waiting for him to decide what kind of man he would become. As he approached the entrance of the emergency room, he realized there was no escaping the truth. What lay ahead would define not only his future, but the legacy he would choose to embrace. The echo of wounded innocence stirred within him, a clarion call he could not ignore. Before he could contemplate his next move, the doctor stepped back, eyes locking onto his with a mixture of hope and dread. "We need family. Can you contact her parents?" The question hung heavy in the air, and as Jake stared into the depths of the hospital, a chilling realization struck him. He would have to confront the demons of the past and the divided community demons that had long defined them. Would he have the courage to reach out and build that bridge? The answer awaited him within those doors, a whisper of destiny urging him forward. Jake felt the cold grip of fear wash over him as he processed the doctor's words. Contacting Lily's parents meant confronting her reality without the comforting facade of denial. The primal urge to run surged in him, but he swallowed hard, steeling himself against the tide of apprehension. The waiting room buzzed with anxiety-laden conversations, the hushed whispers of fellow families waiting for news or support. Each audible sigh echoed in his ears like the ticking of a clock, intensifying his growing sense of urgency. He had never been this afraid, and yet it was in this fear that he found clarity. Every decision he made from this point on could carve a new path, not just for himself but for those around him. "Excuse me, miss," he croaked to a nurse passing by. The words felt awkward in his throat, but they had to be spoken. The nurse turned, her expression a mix of patience and exhaustion. "Yes?" "I need to contact Lily's parents," he said, more resolutely than he felt. "I don't know them, but I can help." Her eyebrows raised slightly, a flicker of admiration perhaps, but the weariness in her eyes spoke volumes. "You've shown bravery today, Jake, but make sure you're ready for whatever comes next. It might get intense." His head nodded before fully comprehending her words. He took a couple of steps and realized he had no idea how to actually reach them. Thoughts spiraled, his mind racing through memories of Lily laughing, the kindness she showed him even during their school days of torment. She would help anyone, even him. She had earned a friend in her own quiet, unassuming way. The hospital's muted chaos faded momentarily as he sought out the nearest exit. The air outside felt alive, a sharp contrast to the sterile atmosphere he just left. He pulled up his phone, scrolling through contacts and ultimately settling on the one person he knew might have a connection to Lily's family. Marta, who lived in the same neighborhood, his only remaining link to any semblance of normalcy. He took a deep breath, feeling its coolness calm his racing heart. When she picked up, he wasted no time. "Marta, it's Jake. I need your help. Lily was shot, and I can't find her family." Shocked silence followed, then a shaky response. "Oh my God, Jake, is she okay?" "I don't know. I'm at the hospital. Can you come here or get someone to her family? They need to be here." Her tone shifted from disbelief to urgency, the bonds of community forged by shared connections tightening, holding her words together. "I'll call them now. Just hold on, okay?" As he hung up, the resolve inside him steadied. He had reclaimed a shred of agency. Connecting with her family felt like stepping onto a fragile bridge built from sincerity and a shared concern for Lily's fate. But would the burdens of expectation overtake him again once they arrived? He pondered. The echoes of the bully's ridicule rang in his ears. What if they blamed him? What if they never understood what he had done? Each question became a weight on his shoulders. He would not let that happen. Whatever judgment awaited him upon their arrival, he would meet it with unshakable resolve. He returned to the waiting area, preparing his mind for confrontation. Would he have to face Lily's father's anger or her mother's despair? He needed to steel himself, to be ready for the discussions that would darken with raw emotion, the grief of a family that might just be too shattered to see any of the good he had tried. As he picked up a magazine, the door swung open, revealing Marta with agony etched across her face. "They're on their way," she said hurriedly, but... Before she could finish, another figure entered, fringe of familiarity standing against the sterile hospital backdrop. It was one of the bullies from earlier, heart racing into a flash flood of confrontation. Jake met his eyes, feeling the tension swell. This moment ahead would threaten to unravel everything he had just begun to stitch together. The fight was no longer out there. It was here, in this space, against the shadows of the past and the fears of a future he had yet to embrace. Would he stay true to the man he was becoming, or would he succumb to the anger of an adversary disguised as a friend? Jake's breath caught in his throat as the bully approached, a smirk spreading across his face, a face Jake had long worked to forget. The hospital's sterile walls pressed in around him, a suffocating reminder of all he wanted to escape. "What's the matter, Jake? Got yourself in over your head again?" The words dripped with condescension, and for a split second Jake's mind reeled, a fleeting image of all the times they had tormented him flashing painfully through his memory. But he couldn't succumb. This was about Lily now, a life hanging precariously in the balance. He straightened his posture, grounding himself in purpose. "Back off, Jordan. This isn't the time." Jordan's eyes narrowed, searching for a crack in Jake's resolve. "What? Are you playing savior now? Is that what this is? You really think you belong here?" Each taunt reverberated within him like a reminder of every insult hurled his way. Jake felt the oppressive weight of judgment, but deep down, an ember of bravery began to spark. "I'm not here for you. I'm here for Lily," he declared, clarity sharpening his defiance. The bully laughed, but it was brittle, as if the laughter were empty, a shield covering insecurity. "You think this makes you a man? Calling for help? Pathetic." An unsettling anger boiled up inside Jake, but instead of responding with fury, he felt an unexpected wave of empathy wash over him. Jordan was a reflection of a past Jake had left behind, a reminder of how far he had come. "You wouldn't understand. You only know how to tear people down. Look where that's gotten you," he shot back. The exchange caught Jordan momentarily off guard, the smirk faltering into confusion. Jake leaned into that moment of vulnerability, fueled by the new awareness of who he was becoming. "I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm done running from people like you," Jake declared, lifting his chin defiantly. "What I'm doing here matters more than your pathetic ideas of toughness. You might want to work on that." For the first time, he saw a flicker of uncertainty cross the bully's face. But at that moment, Marta stepped in, her voice breaking the tension. "Jake, we need to focus. You can handle this later." But in that moment, Jake discovered a surprising strength within himself. He was capable of facing down his fear, standing for something greater, and pushing back against years of intimidation. As Jordan moved away, words still dangling in the air, Jake felt a shift within. The confrontation had reshaped him. He realized it wasn't just about standing up to bullies. It was about owning his narrative. He had the opportunity to rewrite his story, not as the victim, but as an active participant fighting for what was right. Turning back to the waiting area, Jake caught Marta's worried gaze. "I'm okay," he reassured her, but deeper doubts churned beneath the surface. What's next? He thought. He was on the cusp of a new path, but uncertainty knotted tightly in his stomach. Then a fear gripped him again, the impending arrival of Lily's family. Could he still maintain this newfound strength when faced with their grief? What if they looked at him and only saw a reminder of their pain? "Well?" Marta broke into his turbulent thoughts. "You ready to meet them?" "Yeah," he said, resolve hardening with each syllable. He was ready, but it required more than courage to face this. It demanded vulnerability and honesty. He had begun to uncover his capacity for empathy, but would it survive the fallout of family loss? The door swung open once more. A cascade of white coats and somber faces entered the waiting room, an air of desperation trailing behind them. Jake's heart raced. This unfamiliar atmosphere gripped him. How did he prepare to face what was coming? As the family approached, a voice echoed in his mind. The time had come to face not only them, but the truth of his own role in this unfolding tragedy. Jake's heart thudded against his ribcage as he turned to face the family. The very people whose lives had irrevocably changed, and in some small manner, Jake felt tied to that fate. Their expressions were blank, filled with a sorrow that seemed to permeate the air thickly, wrapping around him in waves of unspoken despair. Suddenly, they were no longer figures entering a waiting room, but rather living reminders of the fragility of life. Each countenance was etched with worry, mingled with an apprehension directed towards him, a boy who had found himself in their storm. Jake's mind spiraled towards the moments he had shared with Lily, the laughter and their fleeting normalcy. "Jake," Marta whispered, a slight nudge prompting him into action. The encroaching weight of the emotion in the room necessitated movement, so he stepped forward, a small gesture that felt monumentally significant. "Hey," he managed to say, his voice steely, yet a hint of tremor betrayed the unease coursing through him. The father, burdened shoulders draped beneath a coat that seemed to hang heavier than usual, looked up. "Do we know each other?" His voice was raw, like the wind had been clawing at his throat. "Not directly," Jake admitted, feeling the truth of it pulse through him. "But I know Lily." At the mention of her name, their expressions morphed. Eyes widened, hope warring with despair. The mother clutched her husband's arm, her knuckles white. "You're one of the kids from—" She struggled to finish the thought, but the reality hung heavily. "From the incident?" Jake nodded, swallowing hard against a tidal wave of guilt. How many times had the memories of that day reduced him to helplessness? But he couldn't afford to shrink now. He had a role to play, not as a victim but as a bridge between life and loss, connection and heartache. "Is she okay?" the father asked, his voice cracking, each word like a desperate plea. Jake hesitated, the weight of what he knew threatening to crush him. "She's fighting," he finally said, the words pooling in his mind like an unguarded reservoir. They were painfully optimistic, but they were also true. Lily was a fighter. He had witnessed it in her determination to push through every obstacle. The doctors are doing everything they can. The mother's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and in that moment, Jake felt a stirring deep inside, a surge of purpose. If he hadn't learned vulnerability over the years, maybe it was in this very instant that he had transformed yet again. Facing their fear, testing his own emotions had become a crucible for his growth. Each drop of pain mingling with hope had forged a stronger resolve. "I was there when it happened," he continued, accepting the weight of the confession. "I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I wish I could have done more." The father's face softened, sympathy anchoring a conversation they had never planned to have. Jake could sense their shared humanity even through their grief. He began to understand the power of connection. They were linked by trauma, but in that shared pain lay the possibility of healing. "What do we do now?" the mother asked, frailing her hands as if searching for answers in the motions. Jake could only offer one assurance he was now fully equipped to deliver. "We keep hoping. We hold on to the light until Lily is back with us." As he spoke, he felt an unexpected sense of control envelop him. He realized he wasn't just comforting them. He was anchoring himself in a newfound understanding of resilience, the unyielding human spirit battling against darkness. The conversation ebbed, replaced with pregnant silence. Could they see how his own wounds had made him stronger? Or was he simply a boy on the verge of growth in a room full of shattered souls? A knock at the door startled them all, pulling Jake abruptly from this sacred moment. The doctor appeared, face stern yet infused with the urgency of a man who had seen it all. "Can we speak privately?" he asked, gaze drifting towards Lily's family. The room shifted once again, tension coiling tightly within each heart. Jake felt the fragility in the air, and suddenly his earlier resolve to stand tall wobbled. He wasn't sure what was about to happen next, but as they all turned toward the doctor, a chilling uncertainty settled within him. Would the next wave of information validate their fears, or reinforce the flickering hope he had just fostered? Jake braced himself, the contours of his soul shifting in anticipation. The moment was a significant pivot point, not just for Lily, but for himself as well. How would he redefine his identity in light of this new collective struggle? As the doctor's voice faded into the cacophony of his thoughts, one thing endured. Jake was on the brink of a deeper understanding of life itself, and whatever followed now demanded a readiness that was entirely new. He was compelled to face whatever truths lay ahead, and for the first time, he felt he might just be capable of handling it. The door clicked shut behind the doctor, the instant sound echoing like the final notes of a solemn symphony. Jake's heart raced as he tried to discern the expressions of Lily's parents, ready to absorb whatever news was about to be shared. He had been thrust again into the whirlwind of uncertainty, and for the first time, he felt an urge to shield his emotions, shoring them up like defenses against stormy walls built from previous experiences of grief. "Jake, stay close," Marta whispered, her voice a fragile tether in the encroaching silence. It was an invitation for him to remain a part of this fragile family unit, to offer whatever support he could in this brewing tempest of fear. Within the space of that small, sterile room, the weight of the world pressed heavily upon them. The doctor began speaking, his voice clinical yet measured, revealing fragments of information about Lily's condition that made Jake's stomach twist. Each word was a delicate thread woven into the fabric of their collective narrative, a tale unfolding at the intersection of hope and despair. While the conversation spun around him, Jake felt an internal shift. His focus narrowed, instinctively recognizing that he was being drawn into a new defining moment. It wasn't just about Lily anymore. It was about him, too. Could he remain steadfast? Stand as a pillar for her parents? Would he summon the strength to support them as they navigated an unfathomable reality? Once the doctor wrapped up, leaving the room charged with the chilling news, Jake found himself looking into the faces of the adults before him. The mother's expression was lost, the father's eyes glimmering with the shared burden of heartbreak and uncertainty. But through that chaos, Jake felt a flicker of his own awareness taking root, a powerful realization that he was not just a passive observer, he had a crucial part to play. "I can help," he blurted out suddenly, surprising himself with the clarity of his own words. I mean, however I can, I'm here for you." His heart raced, buttressed by an unexpected conviction. Those around him needed strength to weather the storm he knew too well. "What do you mean?" the father asked, brows furrowing. There was an intensity in his scrutiny that made Jake realize the weight of his promise. He felt this was scarcely a commitment he could make lightly. The energy shifted. He had crossed into uncharted territory, inching closer to monsters he had previously feared. I've been through something similar," Jake stammered, grappling with the implications of his admission. This wasn't just about the incident anymore. It involved confronting the shadows of his past. He was standing on precarious ground, clinging to this newfound determination to bring a sense of agency to others, even while grappling with his own unresolved pain. "I know it's unfair to throw all of this back at you, but your voice matters, Jake," Marta said, breaking the stagnant silence threading through the air. "Speak to them. Share your story." A tingling sensation coursed through him, one that merged fear with something powerful, authenticity. His experiences had forged him in the fires of adversity. Could that very survival become a beacon? "I remember everything," he confessed, leaning in, addressing both the parents now, allowing vulnerability to slip in. "I remember the chaos, the way it felt like the world turned upside down, but I also remember the relentless hope. That's what I need to share." The moment felt fraught with potential as Jake pushed the boundaries of his comfort deeper. In their silence, he could almost feel hope begin to unfurl like a bud touching the sun for the first time. He realized this was his challenge, a test of strength that would define him in the face of fear. Yes, he was scared. Yes, he felt like a child still learning to navigate emotional landscapes. But underneath it all, a profound resolve surged, a call to action that inspired growth. Just then, the door opened again and the nurse entered. "Lily has stabilized," she said, her voice tinged with an optimism that permeated the atmosphere. The collective sigh was palpable, yet Jake's mind raced ahead, spiraling with questions about what stability truly meant in this context. He was facing hardship, but now triumph beckoned like a distant lighthouse. Gathering courage, he steeled himself for the road ahead. Making the decision to embrace his experience wasn't just about healing Lily's family. It felt like a pivotal moment for his own journey as well. "How do I do this?" he thought, an undercurrent of urgency surging through him. The critical awareness of his strengths had ignited something within. As the energy in the room pivoted toward cautious optimism, his thoughts drifted toward the future, and a sense of anticipation swelled inside him. What awaited him in the days ahead? Would he be able to harness this momentum? Would his connection with the family forge a new path, not only for them but for himself as well? With an internal fire now ignited, Jake prepared himself. He was ready to delve deeper into the human experience, to confront whatever hurdles lay ahead. As he glanced at the family, a poignant realization settled. This was merely the beginning. In that moment, he sensed that life had finally placed a choice before him. It was in this personal developing cycle that he felt the tug of destiny. The time had come to face everything he had lived through and emerge anew. The hours drifted by like wisps of mist, and Jake sat in that stark hospital waiting room, a surreal refuge from his racing thoughts. The air crackled with tension, punctuated by the beeping of machines and hushed whispers. An unremitting ache settled in his chest as he recalled the faces of Lily's parents, haunted, terrified. In that depth of feeling, he uncovered a latent determination to rise above his own anxieties. Jake's mind raced with memories that clawed at him, past mistakes, lost opportunities, the very battles that had shaped him. He remembered nights spent fighting back the darkness that threatened to consume him, a relentless specter of grief that had become all too familiar. There was a time when he might have hidden from the world, retreating into the safety of isolation. But now, standing on a precipice of purpose, he refused to let fear dictate his actions. "I can do this," he whispered to himself, repeating the mantra as he traced the waiting room walls with his gaze, searching for inspiration in the mundane decor. Each framed picture, a bright-eyed child in a field, a family laughing together, reminded him of the fragility of life, echoing the hope he was now determined to channel. The walls didn't confine him. They served as a stark reminder of what he was striving for. His thoughts sharpened as he envisioned the next steps he needed to take. He needed to be present for Lily's family, to offer a bridge over the chasm of despair threatening to engulf them. Yet the path was not clear. How could he convey the spectrum of hope he'd encountered through his own healing journey? How could he be a voice when his own trembled in uncertainty? He remembered the words of a counselor who had once pulled him from the depths. Vulnerability creates connection. It was a lesson he had learned, but seldom embraced. The time had come to not just share his experiences, but to embody them. Jake's shoulders relaxed slightly as he drew inspiration from his intentions. He resolved to craft his story not as a tale of despair, but as a map toward resilience. The father's furrowed brows and the mother's lost gaze ignited something within him, a burgeoning strength rooted in empathy. He needed to show them that darkness could be weathered without losing the light. The sudden opening of the door jolted him from his reverie. A doctor stepped in, exuding a calm confidence. "Lily's condition is improving, but there are still hurdles ahead," he said, soothing the fragile hope in the room. Jake glanced at the family, noting how their posture altered slightly with the news. Yet he felt an internal whirlpool of foreboding. Was this hope merely a mirage? What if the strain of reality undid them just as they started to gather strength? Jake leaned back in his chair, steeped in contemplation. How did one maintain hope when the future remained so uncertain? It became glaringly clear that he wasn't just a spectator in this drama. His role was crucial, but also nebulous. The act of sharing his journey would weigh heavily, vulnerability paired with the risk of failure to resonate. As he contemplated how to weave his truth into Lily's narrative, he felt both trepidation and a flicker of resolve. It was time to confront the very memories that threatened to hold him back. What would it take to face these emotions head-on? In that moment of clarity, something shifted inside him. The doubt that had lingered began to dissipate, replaced by an understanding that he had not just the ability to help, but the responsibility to act. Jake set his jaw, and for the first time, felt a deep-seated confidence stirring. His path, while daunting, became increasingly lucid. He could guide Lily's parents through the intricate maze of fear and hope using his own experiences. They might not have walked his particular road, but perhaps they shared the same destination, healing. Just then, a phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him back from the brink of introspection. Fumbling to retrieve it, he glanced at the screen. A message from an old friend. "Remember, you're not alone in this." For a moment, he hesitated. It resonated deeply, echoing the very connection he aspired to forge with Lily's family. Perhaps sharing his story wasn't just about lifting them, but about bridging his past to empower their future. The weight of his decision became palpable. A resolve settled within him. What did it truly mean to reveal himself, to embrace both pain and hope unflinchingly? As another shift of energy thrummed through the waiting room, Jake took a deep breath, preparing for the next chapter of his journey, the one where he would become a source of illumination for those engulfed in darkness, and where his own healing could take flight. The thought lingered, weaving a tapestry of potential. How far would he go to confront his own demons while standing firm in solidarity with others? Would the act of sharing unravel him or set him free? Jake's heart raced as he mulled over the enormity of his task. The implicit responsibility weighed on him, but he couldn't dismiss the overwhelming urgency pulsing through his veins. Steeling himself, he realized that if he were to truly step into his role as a beacon for Lily's family, he'd have to confront the shadows of his past. What better way to cultivate connection than through shared vulnerability? Rising from the chair, he took hesitant steps toward the hospital doors. Each stride represented an active choice to exchange fear for action. He would seek out Lily's parents and offer not just his concern, but a glimpse into the resilience that had pulled him from the brink. As he walked toward the waiting room's exit, Jake initiated a mental checklist, focusing on the groundbreaking yet tenuous balance between openness and composure. How could he share his experiences without overwhelming them? Would their grief allow space for his story, or would they recoil in discomfort? Stepping into the corridor, the hospital's sterile white walls loomed ominously, mirroring his inner turmoil. With each heartbeat, memories surged. Days of wallowing in despair, of desperately seeking out any semblance of hope, non-linear paths peppered with anguish and ecstasy alike. He'd spent years shedding layers of shame, battling the instinct to hide when life became unbearably dark. Remembering the words of that wise counselor, Jake softened his resolve. Vulnerability had unexpectedly birthed deeper relationships in his life. What if sharing his truth could impart strength onto others? He approached the waiting area again and found Lily's parents slumped in their seats, their expressions locked in a mix of hope and fear, eyes darting toward the door every time it swung open. Jake took a deep breath, summoning the courage born of years of self-discovery, and stepped into their view. "Hi, I'm Jake," he said, ushering warmth into his voice. They glanced up, momentarily startled but intrigued. I know this is an incredibly tough time. I wanted to share something from my own journey, some experiences that helped me." As he spoke, he could feel a shift in the room, a subtle fracture in the heaviness. The small curvature of Lily's father's brow began to relax, if only slightly, a crack in the armor of grief. Jake pressed on, detailing his own battles with darkness, how his own pain had shaped him in ways he'd never expected. He shared raw emotions, stories of personal failure, and the growth that emerged from confronting those shadows. His voice quavered slightly. It wasn't easy recounting moments of genuine anguish. Still, he pressed forward, aware that each word was a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. He was offering more than a narrative. He was crafting a bridge sewn with tenderness, illuminating the path toward healing they could navigate together. Lily's mother finally looked up, tears shimmering in her eyes, yet hopeful instead of despaired. You turned your pain into something meaningful," she whispered, absorbing his words. Jake nodded with sincerity. "It's a journey, and I'm still walking it. But I believe it's possible to find light even in the darkest corners of our lives. We can heal together, even if it feels impossible right now." A profound silence enveloped them, and in that moment, Jake understood the transformative power of connection through shared hardship. While he talked about his past, he witnessed not just a glimpse of understanding on their faces, but the acknowledgement that pain could unite them in a quest for healing. Yet just as the glimmer of hope formed a fragile bond among them, a loud crash echoed from a nearby room, reverberating through the awaiting space and shattering the momentary calm. A commotion erupted, drawing their attention as nurses rushed by, their urgency palpable. Jake's pulse quickened as he exchanged worried glances with Lily's parents. What had happened? What did this mean for Lily? He felt an instinctual surge of protectiveness welling up within him. He quickly cast aside the bonding moment, his focus shifting as uncertainty loomed large again. How could he foster strength and connection amid such chaos? The stakes had never felt higher, and with every passing second, the urgency of his presence intensified. Jake took a steadying breath, the sharp pang of anxiety mixing with his resolve. This wasn't just about sharing his story now. It was time to be present, a pillar of support. With anxiety twisting like a knot in his stomach, he turned towards the source of the commotion. The moment was upon him, and he would have to confront whatever lay ahead. Would this chaos derail his purpose, or would it sharpen his focus and commitment to Lily's family when they needed it most? The chaos surged through the corridor like a storm, and as the commotion escalated, Jake felt time stretch, every second punctuated by uncertainty. He glanced back at Lily's parents, their fear palpable and raw. The weight of the moment enveloped them all, an unspoken plea hanging in the air. This chaotic upheaval could terrify them back into silence or act as a catalyst. Jake couldn't afford to falter now. Lily needed them. He could be one of the few sparks of hope in this dark moment. Stealing a glance towards the flurry of nurses, he noticed the urgency etched into their faces. Their expressions spoke louder than words, and an instant suspicion gripped him. Something was wrong. Jake shifted his weight, trying to quell the growing apprehension inside him. How had he thought for a second that sharing his own experiences could carry any weight in the face of such raw crisis? Now, he had to consider how best to direct this new wave of anxiety, whether to comfort Lily's parents or to actively seek information about their daughter. "Stay here," he urged Lily's mother, his voice firm but gentle. "I'll find out what's happening." The mother nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, an acknowledgement of his newfound role as protector. He'd embraced vulnerability with them a moment before, only now to be thrust into action. Could he truly meet this new challenge that felt suddenly monumental? The answer echoed back in his determination. Treading through the thrumming atmosphere, Jake approached a nurse who was standing momentarily still, clipboard in hand. "Excuse me," he said, maintaining his composure despite the whirlwind inside. "What's going on? Is it Lily?" The nurse looked at him briefly, exhaustion blending with fear before she hitched a breath. "We're doing everything we can. She has internal bleeding. We're just stabilizing her." Those words crashed against Jake, visceral and unforgiving. Internal bleeding! The term sent shockwaves through him like a tidal wave. The image of Lily, the bright girl who had lived through so much already, now fighting for her life, flooded his mind. It was time to act. As he folded the anxiety into purpose, a new realization emerged. Though he was not a doctor, nor equipped with medical knowledge, he could still be a steady force for her parents. What he'd learned about resilience could be the anchor they needed to hold fast against their rising tide of despair. Jake turned back toward Lily's parents, their faces strained and raw. He walked back, resolving to use every ounce of strength within him to lift them. "I need you both to focus on Lily," he began, ensuring they understood his intent. "What matters now is to stay strong, for her." In that moment of crisis, Jake could breathe in the essence of his own past struggles, transforming them again into fuel. He knew the relentless battle of holding hope against fear. Offering his experiences wasn't just about words, it was about embodying the essence of perseverance. Lily's father stiffened, his eyes darkened with unspoken grief, yet softened slightly by the resolve in Jake's voice. "And if we lose her?" he asked, each word a battle against the inevitable. Though those words cast a shadow over the room, Jake felt the truth within the question, the lingering doubt of loss. "Then we honor her by showing how deeply we love her now," he replied, grounding his voice to ring with sincerity. As they locked eyes, a quiet understanding formed between them, a bond shaped by purpose. Jake could sense a wave of hope, however fragile, beginning to resonate in the room, a gesture that could help them face whatever winds might come next. Yet, just as a moment of unity sparked between them, another ripple of activity surged through the hall. An urgent voice shattered the charged atmosphere. "Code Blue in room 204. Jake's heart dropped. The air turned thick with urgency again, and it poured forth an immediate quandary. Could he hold Lily's parents together while chaos circled like a vulture outside? Standing frozen for only a heartbeat, he recognized that this was precisely the moment that would define him. The stakes had changed, and for the first time in years, Jake felt the primal instinct to lead. As he absorbed the weight of his charge, he stood taller, determination anchoring him in place, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The time had come to not just support, but to protect, and the looming question echoed through him. How far was he willing to go to be that pillar of strength? Jake stood there, the tension in the waiting room palpable as the urgent call for Code Blue echoed through the hospital halls. This was no longer just about Lily, it was about a convergence of lives woven together by pain and fragility, and he felt that weight settle in his chest like a stone. He turned back to Lily's parents, finding their eyes filled with fear, a reflection of his own. But this was not the moment to falter. Determination surged within him like wild horses breaking free. "We need to stay together," he asserted, his voice strong and confident. "Lily is strong and we can't let fear overwhelm us." As the urgency around them intensified, he realized this was the crucible he'd been striving for, the moment that would solidify his transformation from a shadow of his father to a man grounded in purpose. He needed to be the strength they all desperately sought. Jake took a step closer, softening his tone. "Lily is not just a casualty of this incident. She is a fighter. We need to channel our hope into her." With each word, he felt the grip of his own anxiety begin to loosen. The father nodded, though his eyes remained clouded with doubt. "How can you say that?" he asked, the weight of his anguish palpable. "What if we lose her?" Jake inhaled deeply, embracing the raw honesty of the unanswered question. "Because I understand loss." His voice resonated with newfound conviction. "But I also understand the power of love and resilience in the darkest of moments. My past taught me that hope can endure even when everything seems lost." In that moment, something shifted in the air. The mother's hands trembled slightly and her gaze softened as she absorbed Jake's words. "I wish we could believe that," she replied, the fear in her voice mirrored in the tears shimmering in her eyes. "Believe in the strength of this family," he urged. "You have the power to rally for her, share stories of her laughter, her dreams, and how she brings you joy. Focus on her spirit rather than surrendering to despair." The doorway swung open, interrupting their moment, and a team of doctors rushed past, their efficient urgency igniting a frisson of hope and fear in Jake's spine. "Keep breathing," he said firmly as he faced the parents, refusing to let them spiral into hopelessness. "Every breath we take is a chance for Lily to fight harder. We remind her that she is loved, that we're with her." The moments passed with agonizing slowness as they waited for news. Jake's resolve didn't waver. He found himself replaying memories of the times he had once been afraid to step into his own strength. But now, witnessing the fear in the parents' faces, he knew that everything he had been through led him to this decisive moment. Perhaps it was the shared vulnerability that fortified his resolve. Perhaps it was the souls of all those who had ever fought battles similar to theirs. He felt a transformation blooming inside him. He was no longer just Jake, merely a boy molded by his father's legacy, or marred by his community's perception of weakness. He was forging himself anew as a listener, a supporter, a protector. When a doctor emerged from the back, Jake's heart raced, but he steadied his breath, focusing all of his energy on the parents. "Stay strong," he whispered. "No matter the news, we face it together. We honor Lily by holding on to our love." The doctor's face, though grave, carried a flicker of quiet assurance. "We've stabilized her," he said, relief washing over the room like a balm on raw wounds. "She's in a critical condition, but we're monitoring her. I can see you care deeply. Do you want to see her?" The mother burst into tears, the dam of fear breaking, while the father tried to hold her together. Jake felt his own heart swell. "Yes," he said, that one word hanging in the air like a promise. "Lead the way. We're ready." As they navigated the sterile white halls toward Lily's room, Jake walked beside Lily's parents, ensuring they were united in their moment of vulnerability. Here was the spirit of resilience, the embodiment of what he had fought so hard to grasp. When they entered the room, seeing Lily's pale face resting against the sheets, her small frame surrounded by cords and machines, Jake felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Yet he also felt his newfound strength pulsing through him. He had come to understand the power of love, hope, and shared stories. It was not just about survival. It was about truly living and embracing the moments together. He looked over at Lily's parents, their tears mingling with an undercurrent of strength. They would not let fear define them any longer. Jake stepped forward, finding his voice. "We're right here, Lily. We love you and we believe in you." As hope radiated around them, binding their hearts with the spirit of resilience, Jake felt more than just a personal transformation. He felt the communion of their experiences elevating him. They were no longer just faces in a waiting room. They were a collective force against despair. In the aftermath of the unthinkable, they would be champions of love and hope. Jake had achieved the defining battle. He had conquered his own personal demons, grown into a protector, and forged an everlasting connection that would ripple through every narrative of loss, healing, and hope to come. If you resonate with Jake's transformative journey, you need to subscribe now to the channel for more exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let others discover the power of hope. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this compelling conclusion. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Your voice is crucial in defining the stories that matter.